Famous people who passed away in 1742. This is a third part. Before we proceed, please subscribe to our channel to support us. Nicholas Roosevelt. He was born in October 1658 and he died in July 1742. His age was 83 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Roosevelt was an American politician. He was an early member of Roosevelt family and a prominent Dutch-American citizen of New Amsterdam, later New York City, and was the fourth great-grandfather to Theodore Roosevelt and Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was the first Roosevelt to hold an elected office in North America and was an alderman, as well as the first to use the familiar spelling of the family name. He was a fur trader on a friendly terms with Native Americans. In 1690, he returned with his family to New York, where he was listed as having the occupation of a bolter. He was made a freeman on August 23, 1698. Politically active, he was a supporter of the party of Jacob Leisler, who had led an insurrection in 1689 in support of the succession of Dutch stadtholder William III of Orange-Nassau to the English throne in the Revolution of 1688. Andrew Bradford. He was born in 1686 and he died in November 1742. His age was 56 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Bradford was a pioneer in American journalism and established the American Weekly Mercury, one of the first colonial newspapers. On December 22, 1719, he began publication of the American Weekly Mercury. This was the first newspaper in Philadelphia and enjoyed a wide circulation. He also taught the print business to his nephew, William Bradford. For a time employed Benjamin Franklin when Franklin first came to Philadelphia, introduced by Bradford's father, William. Franklin would go on to establish a rival printing press and newspaper, the Pennsylvania Gazette, in Philadelphia. On February 13, 1741, Bradford published the first issue of the American magazine, the first magazine to be published in America, beating out Franklin for the honor by 3 days. John Old Mixon. He was born in 1673 and he died in July 1742. His age was 69 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. An English historian, Old Mixon was known for his weak sympathies and continuous critique of Troy historians. His first writings were poetry and dramas, among them being Amoris Britannici, epistles historical, and Gallant and a Tragedy, the Governor of Cyprus. His earliest historical work was the British Empire in America, followed by The Secret History of Europe, Arcana Gallica, or The Secret History of France for the last century, and other smaller writings. He completed a continuous history of England by writing the history of England during the reign of William and Mary, Anne and George I, and the history of England during the reign of Henry VIII, Edward VI, and Mary and Elizabeth. Among his other writings are Memoirs of North Britain, Essay on Criticism, and Memoirs of the Press from 1710 to 1740, which was published only after his death. Richard Bentley. He was born in January 1662 and he died in July 1742. His age was 80 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was pleurisy. A towering figure in classical scholarship, Bentley established a textual criticism and profoundly influenced the study of ancient texts. He was an English classical scholar, critic, and theologian, considered as the father of historical philology. Bentley is widely credited with establishing the English school of Hellenism. In 1892, A. E. Houseman called Bentley the greatest scholar that England, or perhaps the Europe, has ever bred. Bentley's dissertation upon the Epistles of Phalaris, published in 1699, proved that the letters in question, supposedly written in the 6th century BCE by the Sicilian tyrant Phalaris, were actually a forgery produced by a Greek sophist in the 2nd century CE. Bentley's investigation of the subject is still regarded as a landmark of textual criticism. William Somerville. He was born in September 1675 and he died in July 1742. His age was 66 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Somerville was a poet celebrated for the chase, which vividly depicted the art of hunting and beauty of English countryside. For Samuel Johnson, Somerville has tried many modes of poetry, and though perhaps he has not in any reached such excellence as to raise much envy, it may commonly be said, at least, that he writes very well for a gentleman. His subjects are commonly such as required no great depth of thought or energy of expression. His fables are generally stale and therefore excite no curiosity. His publications were the two springs, a fable, occasional poems, the chase, hobinol, or the rural games, a burlesque poem describing the coastal games and field sports, a poem on hawkings. The poems continued to be republished for the best part of a century after they first appeared. Susanna Wesley. She was born in January 1669 and she died in July 1742. Her age was 73 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was known as the mother of Methodism. Wesley's guidance shaped religious and moral education of her sons, John and Charles Wesley. The Methodist Church in Britain adds that as a writer, theologian, and teacher, she also deserves recognition in her own right. Susanna Wesley was the youngest of 25 children. Her father, Samuel Ansley, was a dissenter from the established church in England. At the age of 12, Susanna stopped attending her father's church and joined the Church of England. She and Samuel Wesley were married on the 11th November 1688. Samuel was 26 and Susanna was 19. Susanna and Samuel Wesley had 19 children. 9 of her children died as infants. 4 of those who died were twins. A maid accidentally smothered one child. At her death, only 8 of her children were still alive. Hugh Balter. He was born in January 1672 and he died in September 1742. His age was 70 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an influential Archbishop of Armagh who worked tirelessly to improve education and the Protestant Church in Ireland. He also served as a chaplain to George I from 1719. After spending 7 years working as a rector, he was appointed as the Archdeacon of Surrey in 1715, and in 1719 he was announced as the successor of George Smoldridge as both the Dean of Christ Church and as the Bishop of Bristol. He was controversially offered the primacy of the Church of Ireland in 1724. William King, who was an Archbishop of Dublin, was the natural successor to the title, being passed over due to his opposition to the Toleration Act, although the official reason was his age. King showed his bitter disappointment at being passed over by refusing to stand in Balter's presence. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And I'm unable to do the voiceovers in the way I was doing previously because of my health issues. And I expect you all to pray for me and my health. Thank you. Have a nice day. Stay blessed and healthy.